Malka, Imba, Madu, Yussie, Tisha, Zakutinsky, Marco Tier, Kovakoyes, אנחנו לא נשארנו עכשיו בעצמי נשארתי בדעתי שמרה איך דפסני עצרי אין גואי רפאי שמעתי מדוע לא יוסע ארוחת בעצמי Eating Roshimaya, Beni, Bergama, Tapia, Mabala, Sally Bassami, Eating Lamizar, Aloy, Artin, as well as me, Belchita, Ichulam, and Abin, Answer, Sweetin. Ja, du kannst nicht schon noch, kannst du noch schäcken, weil wir mir noch verloren sind. Wir haben jetzt auch, weil sie mir da, ich mir, Bakala, Algetabu, ich Allah, Kagantai, Khoreya, Rabiyabai, ich mir, Yaseu, Diana, Slayna, Veru. You shine on the shaker on the moon. If the fall is near more, yeah, no dance I see, no matter. Okay, come on, it's nice. It needs our long move the hunting. Gave us a tip, that's Sunday. Feishachot, Yishayna, Mimadi, Verbe, Shalom, Israel, Daver, Ubekirba, Yasim, Marbai, Alil, Nil, Adonai, Imagol, Yasher, Kazel, Isis, Nakeh, Namshi, Alarim, Asab, Achidinai, Omais, Mizvarkina, Kinus, Tisha, Aishamu, Domina, Yadashimaya, Ladima, Nadadu, Wallah, Kinus, Sati, as you shall lie, Legalim, Aifanim, Tesare, Yuda, Deshmama, Between Yeshabachom, Yuvain, Zois, Asher, Diber, Yadika, Yela, Yadika, Amah, the Horeb, Nitzasam, and Bar, Yoder, Yomer, Adina, I was honest, let us see, lift my hand. Loishalom, Khairi, Loyal Through, Vayelchu, Acharei, Shurusliba, Vachrei Olim, Asher Lindo, Avaisam. Vachrei, Toyamar, Adonai Tzvah, Yisrael, Kenili, Kenili, Machna, Mestamazem, Mana, Eshkizah, Midrash, Avitzes, Avitzes, Nagoyim, Asher lo yadu himo Avaisam. Yishmachti Achrim Matzacheret, Kalitzim Etzam. V'hamar Adonai Tzvah, Yisrael, V'piru V'yra, Yizaz V'yayna, V'chacham V'shulchu, V'asavayna, Utzmayena, V'asisano, V'yunani, V'sirad Minenu, V'yra,
Kinus that we're going to say. Hopefully, is spread around. People have copies of this page.
Yeah.
Yes. No.
Yeah.
Okay, so just a couple minutes of just hakdama b'chalal what's happening by Kinus. The word I think I mentioned this last year, that the word Kinus, kinna, is according to the Svarim tradition, comes from the same word. It comes from the lashon of kan sipur, a bird's nest. And by saying Kinus, by going through the process of Kinus, we are returning the bird to its nest. So it says in Svarim, the Zohar Kadosh. So what does that mean? Okay, so it's like this. It's important to understand this point because it's going to be the mindset that's necessary throughout the entire day of Tisha B'Av and Befrat by Kinus. We said last night by Eicha, one of the harsher psukim in Eicha is that it says, Gam ki ezek v'ashaveya, even when you call out and you daven, said the Navi Yirmiyah, Sosam tfilasi. Hashem has closed our tfilas. Sosam tfilasi. Sakoisa me'anon lach mavar tfilah. Pasuk says a little bit later on that Hashem put a cloud to stop tfilas from ascending on Tisha B'Av. And the truth is that's even in halacha. There's halachas that revolve around this, that Tisha B'Av is not a day of tfilah. Doesn't work. Tfilah pasha doesn't seem to work. Sosam tfilasi. Sosam tfilasi. That's why you don't say Kaddish. Discable, different things. But what's interesting is that Kinus, we say this in the middle of daven. If you think about last night, Eicha was also in the middle of daven. So it's almost as if the regular form of tefillah doesn't seem to work. Sasam tefillasi. But what we're going to try to do is a different form of tefillah, which is the form of Kinus. So how does that? What is that exactly? Okay, so let me share with you an idea. This is probably not like Tisha B'Av, but it's important to understand. In the Kisvei we find that the Seder of davening, we do this every day, so it's mamish important to know. Our life depends on it. The Seder of davening every day is, Karbanas, Pesukah de Zimra, Kriyishma, Brachas Kriyishma, Shemoneh Esrei, right? It's all leading up to Shemoneh Esrei. The Rizal taught the following thing, that the process of tefillah is the following, the concept is as follows. In order for us to, what do we want to accomplish with davening? What we want to accomplish is Bani Chaim Mizayni, right? We want to bring down Shefa from the Rebbeinu Shalom, from the highest of places, from that place that's called Ayin, that place of nothingness, that place of infinity. We want to draw down Chiyas and life force and good things to our families, to Klal Yisrael, to the world. Draw down Elikus. That's what we want. The Rizal taught the process is as follows. We start down here on planet Earth, very far from that place of nothingness, place of infinity, and we have to climb the ladder up. And the Rizal taught the process of davening is climbing that ladder. And what's amazing is that along the way, it's like, we're like the Pied Piper. Along the way, along with us on that journey, comes the entire Bria. So Lamashal, that Rizal taught by Karbanas, the kavanah that a person should have is to be makasha your nefesh. That part of you which is very earthly and physical, be makasha your nefesh to all the nefashas of the entire universe. It means all the nefashas of other Jews, all the nefashas of Goyim, the nefashas of every stone, every flower, every asteroid. Be makashi yourself to all the nefashas of the world. And with that, you are now ascending. And then when you get to Pesukah de Zimra, you are now not alone, you're with all the nefashas of the universe. And by Pesukah de Zimra, you're makashi yourself, you're makashi your ruach, with all the ruchais of the universe. What's a ruach? A ruach, again, ruach is a little bit beyond physical. That's why Pesukah de Zimra talks about poetry, singing, a little bit more emotional, the emotional reality, the emotional consciousness of all reality. And then you go even higher by Kriya Shema and your Makasha, your Neshama, with all the Neshama of all things, Nefesh Ruach Neshama. And now you're getting closer to that place of Ayin, and you have with you every molecule of the universe, you have with you all the emotions of the universe, and with Kriya Shema you have with you all the Malachim, all the spiritual beings of the universe. They're mamish all with you, and you're leading the charge. But then when you actually get to Shemoneh Esrei is called Ayin. Shemoneh Esrei is that place of nothingness. That's why Shemoneh Esrei is quiet. Even Chazar Sashatz is only the Chazan. Shemoneh Esrei means that place of nothingness, of infinite. And the Rizal taught an amazing thing. That actually when you get to that place, then all the other Chevra has to stay behind. It's only you allowed into that place. Only you. You cannot be anyone else. All the nefashis of the universe, all the molecules, all the asteroids, all the flowers, and all the malachim, not allowed in. They have to wait. They have to wait till you're done. When Shemoneh Esrei is over, and you take 3 steps back from that place of ayin, now you have within you amount of shefa to distribute to the universe. So then you go with Tachna and Shema and Ashrei and Valtzia and Shir Shel Yoim all the way to Aleinu, and that's the moment of distributing the shefa that you received by Shemoneh Esrei. All this is contained in what the Zohar Kadosh says. This is the words of the Zohar Kadosh. It's going on the pasuk, Al tiru'uni shani shacher cheres. The pasuk is in Shir Shirim. Don't see me because I'm blackened. Shezavasni hashamash. I've been blackened by the sun. On a simple pshat, the pasuk is saying something terrible, something negative, like I'm embarrassed to be looked at. But the Zohar says the following thing. This is the Yid talking when you're about to stand Shemoneh Esrei. Lo yiseichel lemechzebi, and you turn to the whole universe that you've been, parading with since the beginning of Karbanis, and you turn to them and you say, Lo yiseichel lemechzebi, you cannot see me anymore. Do'ano b'temiru, because I am now going into a hidden place. Ubegenizu, baraza dechad. I'm going to that place that's the mystery of oneness. Nekuda d'lo yasyada b'chol asar, the point that's impossible to be known in any place, and only I am allowed to go there. B'chol uchlusuhu b'tevusa l'skar v'lagabe. And the entire universe is like chalashing to come in with you. They want to come in with you. You know what I mean? Shemoneh Esrei. And you're closing the door on them and they're not allowed in. The kiv the umrada, and every time you say Shemoneh Esrei, your neshama is saying this pasuk. Aval tiruni shani shecheres. Don't look at me, don't see me, don't try to come in because I'm blackened by the light of the sun. Black means unknowable, means ayin, it means nothingness. And I'm blackened by the brilliant light of the sun, which is the Rebbeinu Shalom himself, kiviyachol. Don't look at me. And therefore they retreat and allow you to go into Shemoneh Esrei. This is what's called in halacha. The halacha pasuk says in Shulchan Aruch that Shemoneh Esrei should be davened with what's called hispashtas hagashmis, a divestment of one's physicality. That's what Shemoneh Esrei is, ayin. I know what you're all thinking. Same thing I'm thinking, which is I never had a Shemoneh Esrei like that, right? So this is a big problem. The problem is for Shemoneh Esrei to work, a Jew has to be in a bechin of ayin. You have to be in a place of nothingness. You have to be nothing. You have to be completely bottled with ein sof. Ispashtas hagashmias, divesting one's physicality. And only that's where the shefa is. That's where it is. So the question is, our generation, even early generations, the average Jew to reach such madrigas it's not likely. So Baruch Hashem, the Rebbeinu Shalom gave us an eitzah from his tzaddikim, and the eitzah is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is a day where the Jewish people are able, all of us, get to that place of ayin. How? You see, what's interesting about how Hashem made the world is that this place of nothingness, you can get there by going all the way up. That's the normal approach. Ketairas, so the Zimra, Kriyashim, all the way to Shemoneh Esrei. But going the derech aliyah, it's for b'nei aliyah, it's very difficult. But the Rebbeinu Shalom made the world in such a way that the same place of nothingness a Jew can get to by going all the way to the bottom. Listen to the words of the Kamarna. He writes in the Sefer Mitzvah Mitzvah Sachel. It is impossible for a Jew to have any level of unity, mamish unity with Ein Sof, with the Infinite One, until you get rid of all your yeshas. What is yeshas? Ego, gaiva, yeshas. The worst. You have to get rid of your yeshas. What is the mentality of a Jew that's in that place of ayin? That's a Jew that serves the Rebbeinu Shalom. He's not thinking about reward. It's al menas shaloi lekabel pras. I don't want reward, because reward means I'm something. I'm not nothing. That's called ayin. Any level of ani that a person has is a mechitza between you and Ein Sof. But he says like this, but said the Kamarna, but there's a way through tsaris and through bizyonis and through falling to low places. That's also a way to get to nothing. See, the key of nothing, the key of ayin is what? We have a chelik l'kami mal mamish inside of us. We're always standing Shemoneh Esrei. The difference is that to the extent that you get rid of your yeshus, automatically you'll be in Shemoneh Esrei. In other words, in the writings of the Rizal, it's like you have to enter into this place that's called ayin, it's called Shemoneh Esrei. But in Chassidus we're taught, you're always in that place of ayin. You just don't realize it, or you're not able to experience it and really allow yourself to be there because of your yeshus. But if there could be a echetimsa, if you could come up with a way to get rid of one's yeshus, then automatically that's Shemini Esrei. And so the Kamarna, one of the biggest ways to get rid of yeshus is what? Is to be honest and to be open. What we've went through collectively, individually, the tzaras is Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is a way, the entire day of Tisha B'Av is Shemini Esrei. Sosam Tfilasi, the mechitza that stands between us and davening, that's only b'derech aliyah. That's when you're trying to get to ayin in the way of going up. That's almost impossible in Tisha B'Av. But there's an eitzah of going under. You go all the way to the bottom. The Kamarna says, when a person has this sense of ayin that comes from being all the way down, of a little bit of hachna, of humility. So he says, as mamish daimah v'fnei atzmai, then mamish, you look at yourself, kibirya ha'pechusa shebechol nevroim. You can look at yourself, mamish, like the worst creature, or one of the worst creatures. Umakasher atzmai im kulam shava b'shava. And what's amazing about this level of ayin is that this level of ayin doesn't leave anyone out. When you're going to the place of nothingness, the place of infinite, of Ein Sof, b'derech aliyah, so that's only for b'nei aliyah, and all the nefashas, all the ruchas, all the neshamas of the world can't go into that place. But when you're going into a way of ayin, through bittul, through hachna, through the bizyainis that you feel within yourself, then there's no you to say I'm going in as opposed to these. It's all the same. You're makasha yourself to all of reality. V'yovel hispashas agashmi, he said that's called hispashas agashmi. That's called divesting yourself of your ego. In bo'ilav yisurim v'yeridas u'bizyonis. If a person experiences yisurim or yeridas, bizyonis, aniyas, tsar, gam heim, with the right mentality, with the bechin of ayin, with knowing that these are tools that the Rebbe Shem is giving us to get you to a place of nothingness, to allow you to experience Ein Sof. Gam heim marchiven daite l'avodas habari. That's going to expand your mind and your consciousness to serve the Rebbe Shem. V'yovel l'bechinas ayin. And when you get to that place of ayin, then the light of your neshama takes hold of you and you become a fiery yid. Ein shir b'simcha b'leiv tov. And there's no shir to how much simcha you can experience dafka at that moment of tsar, of bizyonis, of yeridas. This is the whole inyan of Eicha. The whole inyan of Eicha is what? The first kinna that we're going to say is kinna number 6, which is all about, a little bit of Achana, it's all about the loneliness of the Jewish people. The loneliness of the Jewish people. It's terrible. Eicha Yoshabad, the whole thing is about loneliness. The Bedidas. But you have to understand, we have to appreciate, as we're singing this kinna, as we're saying this kinna, as Hashem will sing Nigunu throughout, but to appreciate that this loneliness itself that we experience in a way of bizyonis and yeridas and saras is the same. It's just the other side of the coin of what? Of v'niska v'yamu Hashem levada v'yashem l'melcha kol haaretz. That bedidas, that loneliness that comes from just being one. The Rebbe Shalom is also lonely, but the loneliness of the Rebbe Shalom is because all there is him. So we want to be makash ourselves to that unity. So any other day, it's by going up, but by Tisha B'Av, it's by feeling Eicha Yoshva Bada, and feeling how the entire planet, we're so alien from everyone else. Like, think about this for a second. Like, I'm sure we've all, you go traveling, whatever it is. Like, a non-Jew, again, it's not their fault. They don't have Torah Messiah, whatever. But it's a different. They're living on a different planet. How would you begin to explain to a non-Jew the sensitivities that we have as Yid, as from Yid? It's hard enough even to a non-religious Jew to explain sensitivities. It's unfathomable to us if you think about it, how alone we are in the world. So that could overwhelm a person with depression, and especially back in the day of our ancestors, where that loneliness also came with a sense of fear, of threat, and there was always that danger lurking. And we just got, we fell into the fantasy and the delusion of America that as if that's not really true, it's always there. So that could break a person, or it's building your kalim. It's building you to that place of what? Of being bebedidas, of being alone with Rabban Shalom, of that yichud, of that achtos, of Ein Sof, of ayin. This is why Kinnos, as I said in the beginning, is the same language as a bird going back to her nest. The nest is Ein Sof, the nest is ayin. And that's what Kinus are. Kinus are to return you to that place in a way that you can't always easily do by regular Shemoneh Esrei. So the whole inyan is davening. So every single second that we're literally davening. And like I said, the Kinus are difficult. The Hebrew is obviously hard. You have the English. Do the best you can. The ikr is the hachna. The ikr is the humility. To whatever extent you can let go of your yeshus, even for 5 minutes, for an hour, whatever it is, that's the tachlis. To that extent, you're helping your tefillah for the whole year, because all the Shemoneh Esreis of the year depend on you getting to that place of ayin. And unless you're a ben aliyah that you get to the going up, you need Tisha B'Av. So Hashem should help us. We should be zocheh to that bedidus, that loneliness that we're about to talk about in a minute from now. That bedidus should be converted, be translated, to be shown for what it really is, which is just a reflection of that bedidus of the Yichud Hashem, the Yichud of Kol Yisrael, At Echad, Shimcha Echad, Mi Kam Chisod, Go Yechad Ba'aretz. Shavah Asur complexity of goals. The next kinna number 7 is going to really be about. It's a strange thing because when the Beis Hamikdash is being described as a Beis Tefillah, Yikari L'chol Ha'am, a place that all nations should come to. And the truth is, when Shlomo HaMelech dedicated the Beis Hamikdash and he had a whole tefillah, bracha, a speech that he gave, the focus of it was not that the Beis Hamikdash should be the center of Jewish life. Shlomo HaMelech's focus was that the Beis Hamikdash should be the center of the entire planet. And that's why Shlomo HaMelech married Dafka. He went out of his way to marry 70 wives from each one of the 70 nations, because Shlomo HaMelech was hoping that he would be Mashiach ben David. He was literally the first ben David. And because of that, he knew that Mashiach ben David, his job is to unite the whole world. And so this creates a very strange dynamic, because on the one hand, as we're in Gullus, certainly as Nishmas Yisrael, we don't belong here, we're not from here, we want to get out of this place. But Mitzad Sheni, it's not so pashut, because Kaidim Kol, first of all, certainly there's still avodah to be done if Mashiach hasn't come yet, but more than that, there's a part of the Nefesh, Mashiach ben David, the Shlomo HaMelech part of the Nefesh, that doesn't want to leave the world behind. Not because it's so good, Gashmias wise, that's nothing. That's not because we don't want to leave this place, because we want kibesi beis tefillah yikar l'chol am, and that's why eicha, the word eicha equals begematria 36, corresponding to the 36 hidden tzaddikim. The Zohar says that these lamed vav tzaddikim, there's really two groupings of them. There's lamed vav tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael, and there's lamed vav tzaddikim in Chutz La'aretz. And the secret of lamed vav tzaddikim is to somehow unite that way, that avodah that's in Chutz La'aretz with that avodah in Eretz Yisrael. This is what Eicha is. Eicha is like we're outside of Eretz Yisrael, we're like wanting to get there, so why don't you go? It's not just Manias, there's something inside of us. We want to schlep the whole planet along. It's like Yaakov Avinu said to Esav, I'm going to take my time, and eventually I'll get to you, because the regular malacha, there's a lot of avodah to be done. And so this next kinna, which is all about using the word eicha, the avodah of this kinna is to somehow try to unite that world of Eretz Yisrael with the world of Chutz La'aretz. Eretz Yisrael means menucha, means harvacha, means light, it means gevaldik. Chutz La'aretz means there's something missing. And the tachlis is to unite the two. The tachlis is when Mashiach comes, it's not just everything will be fine, everything will be great, but there's something deeply holy and deeply eternal with that sense of longing that comes with being stuck in Chutz La'aretz. And that longing, that gaguim, that cheshek, is what's going to allow the menucha of Mashiach to be a menucha that's exciting. You understand? Because you all know when you do something, you can have something that's delicious or something that's very geschmack, and you do it like 24/7, like the rest of your life, it gets boring. So there needs to be like this movement, like a hefsek in between, that it shouldn't be a tanug tmidi. What's going to allow Mashiach to be a tanug, but a tanug that always has like a deeper taste every single second, is because we're carrying with us to Eretz Yisrael thousands of years of Chutz La'aretz experience. And that's called uniting the Lama of Tzaddikim in Chutz La'aretz with the Lama of Tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael. That it shouldn't just be like, okay, das is das with Mashiach. It should be every single second of Mashiach. It should be as satisfying and as exciting and as exhilarating as the first second. It's never going to dip. The excitement will never dip. It'll only get more excited. We'll realize every single second how amazing it is we have Beis Hamikdash again. Because we're not going to lose sight. We're not going to forget. And we're not going to let go of the gaguim, of the cheshek, of the bechin of Chutz La'aretz. That's the iskashos of Lama of Tzaddikim, and Chutzos of Lama of Tzaddikim in Eretz Yisrael. It's like to feel that in our own lives. That's where Mevakesh Hashem comes from. It's that unity of the satisfaction, the simchas leiv, right? That simchas leiv that comes with knowing the Rebbeinu Shem is in front of you, but always knowing that there's deeper that you can go, which creates that bikush. That's the yichud of Eretz Yisrael and Chutz La'aretz. Echad Chuk Shemayim. So this kinna is interesting. This kinna, if only I could soar to heaven. The whole kinna is basically saying, like, if only I can cry. If only I could bring everyone to mourn with me. If only. This kinna is in truth mourning over one of the most difficult gezeres of Golus. It says in Pasuk, we read last night, Tzion hi mavak dorish einla. Tzion hi dorish einla. There's no one searching, there's no one calling out, there's no one demanding Tzion. There's no one demanding Beis HaMikdash. The Gemara says, Mechal de B'ay Drisha. See, that Pasuk is not just telling us a fact. Okay, the fact is, no one cares. That's the Gezerah of Golus. One of the decrees of Golus is the extreme difficulty of mourning over the loss. And by the way, this is not just like, okay, it's a din, it's a Gezerah. There's a reason for this. The reason is because, it's going to sound a little bit strange, but the reason is there is nothing in the Metzias, not physical, not emotional, there's nothing that's a good mashal to what Yerushalayim was, to what Yerushalayim really is. The Rebbeinu Shalom did not make the world in such a way where there's anything that could even be somewhat of a mashal to explain how close the Rebbeinu Shalom feels to us. There's no mashal to it. Even if we find, kirachim aval banim, or like a husband and wife, those are not real mashal. It's not good because a mashal is at least related to the mashal. There's nothing to say. And the pasuk says, "The Tomer Tzion Azavani Hashem." That Tzion, the Jewish people say that Hashem has left me. Hashem shechachani, Hashem has forgotten me. So what does Hashem say? So Hashem says, "Hatishkach isha oila." Can a woman forget her own husband? Can a person forget the one that loves them? And then the pasuk says, "Gam eila tishkachachna." Even if they would forget, even if it's possible for a husband to forget a wife and vice versa, "Ani lo yashkechech," I won't forget you. So what the pasuk is saying? The pasuk starts off saying there's a mashal. Just as a wife wouldn't forget a husband or vice versa, so too I won't forget you. Then the pasuk says, but the truth is, my love for you is deeper than that. My love for you cannot be compared even with derech mashal to husband and wife. And even if the mashal breaks down and there's such a thing as a husband literally forgetting a wife and vice versa, ani lo yashkechech, I won't forget you. This is what makes mourning over Yerushalayim so incredibly difficult, because there's nothing to compare it to. And every time you try to have something to compare it to, in the deepest part of your neshama, you know it's not it. And therefore there's a deep frustration in that. So people, whatever. So you can have videos and all these things that try to remind you. The only part of you that's able to be Mesavel Yerushalayim is the deepest part of you that still remembers Yerushalayim. And although it's been a long time, you have to deep within yourself to find that nekuda. He says, "Zanecha zachara es Yerushalayim imei anya murideha," that Yerushalayim, the Jewish people, during the times of her difficulties, during the times of Galus, she remembers kol yemei machmudeha, all the days of her greatness. That's not just like pouring salt on a wound. That's how we're able to mourn. That's how we're able to have a Tisha B'Av, because deep down within us, there's a part of us that remembers Yerushalayim. The reason why all of you are here, the reason why I'm here, the reason why there's a Tisha B'Av in the world is because Zachar Yerushalayim, it's Mei Anya Merudeh, it's Kol Machmeda, because you remember where Yerushalayim was. And this Kinnan of Ches is trying to break through that barrier, that klipa, that tumah of Dorish Einla. And this kinna is a strong kinna to awaken that memory of Yerushalayim. To remember, not just, even if you can't explain it because there's no mashal to it, but to know within your deepest part of yourself what Yerushalayim was, and to want that, even if you can't explain it to yourself what it is that you want, but you know that you want it. That's what this kinna is about. We should be zeicha to be that generation, those people, like the Gemara says, Mechlal de Boydrish. Be those people that are Dorishas Hashem, the Dorishas Sion, Yerushalayim, and that's how Mashiach is going to come. That Chok Shemayim, It's an amazing thing, there's so many stories of tzaddikim, like they say a ma'isa about the Kotzker, that the Kotzker, if you were Zoicha, not Zoicha, if you were Zoicha, that he would shake your hand. It was Badik Kinus. It was guaranteed that if you touched the Kotzker, if you shook your hand, you become a different person, and you'd be Chaysev Tshuva, you become B'tzad. These things. So, just like I said before, that there's no good mashal to Yerushalayim. There's no good mashal to it. Either you experienced it or you didn't. Baruch Hashem, we have an neshama, so it means we did. The same. There's also no mashal to a tzaddik. There's no mashal to a tzaddik. A tzaddik is not just someone that's smarter. V'chulu v'chulu. A tzaddik is a different mitzias altogether. And the biggest proof of that, and this is the biggest proof that Yerushalayim is also a different mitzias, is that unless you have eyes to appreciate it, you mamish don't see it at all, right? So you think about it, like these tzaddikim that the Yidden are tzitering, mamish tzitering from, and more than just like emotion, like unbelievable things happen when the tzaddik touches you, when the tzaddik speaks to you, when he thinks about you. And then you have the guy in the Holocaust and things like this. Those same tzaddikim that are mamish like a fire, mamish a fire. So the Goyim are able to be matap with them, and they don't I don't see it. So same Yerushalayim, that when you go to Yerushalayim and you see the Kaisel, that place that is kamat, not physical, mamish kamat, not physical. It's mamish atzilos in Asiya. So that place, and then you look in the news and like there's a reporter reporting from the Kaisel. It's like that itself. The fact that, see, if Eretz Yisrael, if a tzaddik was something of this world, so fine, then everything of this world would appreciate what that is, maybe to whatever different degrees and different extents, but it's b'chol not something from this place. So then either if you're not from this place, then you'll appreciate it, but if you're from this place, it's not within your hasagas. This is why the tzaddikim say that there's such an Indian that's sayin and emunas tzaddikim, to believe in tzaddikim. That's what the Gemara writes. I was into Kamarna this past week. So it says like this: Lahavi Yudua, you should know. Kimoi sheish nisyonis gedolos laadam. Just as there's nisyonis to a person. Achi dabik atzmi leboyre kol elamin. And that question, whether you're going to attach yourself to the Creator of all worlds, oy lifresh chalila, or the opposite. Kein yesh nisyonis al bnei adam rabbis v'chalukas. So too, there's a tremendous amount of nisyonis on the same par. Adei pitoi sam. Whether you're going to believe in tzaddikim or not. Our survival depends on believing in tzaddikim. Because tzaddikim, they are the Beis HaMikdash. You cannot be Mesavel over Yerushalayim unless you remember the Beis HaMikdash is. How do you have that memory? The best way to evoke it is by placing in your mind's eye the world of a tzaddik. To believe in a tzaddik means to connect that part of you that's still connected to Yerushalayim. As the Gemara says, that the death of tzaddikim is equal or greater than the death of the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. That's what this kin is. This kin is Yirmiyahu Hanavi bemoaning and lamenting over the death of Yoshiyahu HaMelech. This has to be seen as a kinna through which we're makasher ourselves to all the tzaddikim. Tzaddikim from every chug, Sfardi, Ashkenazi, Chassidish, you name it. Those that are from the generation, that are from previous generations, future generations, the neshamas of tzaddikim, like the Gemara says, Rabban Shalom made a certain amount of neshamas of tzaddikim, and he saw that there was only a limited amount, and he spread them throughout the generations. The biggest, a tzaddik is able to uplift a person in ways that you yourself could. It's very hard to do on your own. Very quickly, I'm not going to do this before. I think it's getting long, but the one quick story. There's a ma'aseh, one of the chassidim of all time. I can't remember his name. Let's call him Beryl. So this Beryl, so he was mamash adichas, and he would go to Sukkot in particular. He always go to the Baal Tanya for Sukkot. There's one particular year that he was sick and he wasn't able to make it. So he was a chashav, Talmid Chacham in his own right. So he had to bring in his sukkah, by one of the days of Chalamayda, Sukkot Yeshev or something. So while he was there, while he was in his sukkah, he gave Rebbe crafts. He said, "Aye, Rebbe. And he did that a couple times. And fine, okay, it was interesting. Fine, it was like out of nowhere. But later on, like the word started to spread that Mamish that same night by the Baal Tanya when he was having for bringing, and Mamish the same time the Baal Tanya would call it, Beryl. Question is who said it first? I don't know. So what was going on over there. So Chassidim obviously saw that there was this deep iskashus between Baal Tanya and Mr. Beryl. So they said, Beryl, we go to Yechidus also. Like what's the difference between us and you? So Mr. Beryl said that the first time I went to the Baal Tanya, so I went with my entire soul. But then after Yechidus was over, I left behind my nefesh. And then when I went the second time, I came with everything I had, and I left behind my ruach. And the third time, I left behind my neshama, and that's where I am. So of course, the Rebbe is kashing himself with me. That's the difference, You can believe in a tzaddik, yeah, but to really give your neshama over to the tzaddik, that's the difference. That upgrades you. You want to upgrade for your phone, all that stuff. How do you get an upgrade of a neshama? There's different kavanas to have, but one of the strongest ways is to give your neshama over to the tzaddik, and they'll do what they need to do with it. We have to kasher ourselves to them. So this is talking about when Titus came to the Beis Hamikdash, the second Beis Hamikdash, and the barbarism of it, just how barbaric it was. And you read it, it's like it's almost it's hard to imagine such barbarism. I mean, the truth is, thank you for speaking. Thank you. Yeah, so the letter that you show me, it's like the truth is, Titus would blush from the Nazis. That's really the truth. But there's one clue I was thinking about this inyan of just how barbaric these people were. Not the Yiddim, so they're going Titus and our enemies. This is not a Pashut Torah. Just for a couple minutes, a piece from Rav Kook. Rav Kook wrote during World War I, the outbreak of World War I. Rav Kook wrote an essay, a bunch of poems called Milchama, just about the concept of war, B'chlal. And one of the pieces is what he writes. It's a half-a-good thing. He says, "Azavnu es politica ha'ilamis." By the Churban Beis Hamikdash, the Jewish people, we were forced out of world politics. Yeah, forced out of world politics. Now no one cared about our opinion. We were now a wandering people. Mi'oinis, it was obviously against our will, but sheyesh by rotzin pnimi. But deep down, Klal Yisrael were somewhat happy with being allowed to leave the world scene. It's an amazing thing. Why? Ana shetove eis, and the Jewish people, and Rav Kook said this is part of what keeps Golus going, is that although it's against our will, of course, that deep down there's a part of us that's actually happy, and it's going, and that changes only until the time comes, mushara, till the proper time, she evshir lenahel mamlocha, to the point of where we'll be able to run a government, to run a country, without their barbarism of the ancient times. There's a deep part of Nishmas Yisrael. See, Klal Yisrael, Rav Kook in other places calls Jewish strength. When we go to war and we fight battles, he calls it Gvura Adina, delicate strength. Nishmas Yisrael is very delicate. We come from a very, very soft place. And there was a deep pain in Klal Yisrael in having to be a country during the ancient times when the nations that were so barbaric, and being a country, dealing with them in warfare, like it forced you to be barbaric, to be cruel. And Nishmas Yisrael is not cruel. And so when we went into Golus, it was ba'inus. It was certainly an ainus. As Rav Kook says, sheyesh ba rotzin pnimi. There was a part of us which is okay. Listen, at least we could be the victims now instead of having to be the aggressors. And there's something deeply holy in that. It says in Pasuk, Hashem yivakish nirdav. That Hashem always roots for the underdog. You know, Hashem always roots for the nirdav, the one that's being chased. And Chazal say, even if the roidif is a tzaddik and the nirdaf is a rasha, Hashem yivakish nirdav. There's something holy about being oppressed. It sounds a little bit strange. And the Jewish people are waiting, and Rav Kook then goes on to say, obviously in his way, and now it's the time. Rav Kook said, now it's the time for the Jewish people to sort of be confident that we could run a country, obviously dealing with difficulty in Yanam with the nations of the world, but we can do it in a way of Gvura Dina, in a way of a delicate strength. It doesn't have to be with the barbarism. We can handle it, as opposed to the earlier times. And so part of this kinna that is talking about, and we'll see Kinnos weiter about the crusade, just the barbarism of Golus, to understand that there's a deep nechama in this, to be the victims of those people and not being the Nazi yourself, you know? There's Hashem with this kinnas, and we should be zeicha to be, like Rav Kook said, to be of that time, where we could return to world political ilamis, you know? In a way of Kedusha and Tahara, to build Malchus Yisrael the way it's supposed to be, B'Torah and Avodah, Kedusha of Tahara, and with the confidence that, of course, it's going to take Gevura, but we can have Gevura Dina. Zohar Shaz Etzar B'Fnim talking about what's the Beis Hamikdash? What's the Beis Hamikdash really? So Friday night, one of the zmiras we have is Karban Olam. So in Karban Olam, there's a line that sums up what the Beis Hamikdash is. It says L'mikdash tov u'l'kodesh hakodshim. That Hashem, you should return to the Beis Hamikdash, return to the Kodesh HaKodshim. What is the Beis Hamikdash? What is the Kodesh HaKodshim? Asar divei yechdun ruchin v'nafshin. The place in which ruach and nefesh is unified. That means nefesh means a part of you that's earthly, that's human. Ruach is a part of you that's completely spiritual and trying to connect you to that place of nothingness. The Beis Hamikdash was a place in which ruach and nefesh unified. It's that edelkeit that is so natural to the ruach of a Jew, it permeated the nefesh as well. That the nefesh of the Jewish people, we were kind and caring and giving and sensitive. To have a Jewish heart. To have a Jewish heart. That Jewish heart, which means to feel the pain of someone else, to feel your own pain even. That comes from the yichud of ruach and nefesh. Because the ruach is completely open. And the nefesh by itself is earthly and rocky and egocentric and callous. But asar divei yechdun ruchin v'nafshin. The Beis Hamikdash, the nefesh becomes softened, and a Jewish person is rachmanim b'nei rachmanim, gomlei chasadim, baishanim. The midas tovus of Nishmas Yisrael comes from the fact that the Beis Hamikdash is a part of us, that the ruach and the nefesh are unified. When the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed, that unity is somewhat damaged. And the ruach disappears, and we're left without much ways of connecting ourselves to that which is higher. But then the nefesh also suffers. The nefesh becomes much more rocky and callous, and the rachmanim, baishanim, gomlei chasadim becomes a little bit lost, unfortunately. And so this kin is bemoaning that Nakuda. It's bemoaning like what happened, the Rahman is, the Gamech HaSadim, the natural Nitiyas HaNefesh of a Yid, when there is the influence of the Ruach with the Beis HaMikdash. This unfortunately is something lacking with the Churban Beis HaMikdash. And so as we say this kinna, it's about really, really trying to daven to Hashem that we should have empathy to other people. We should have empathy to ourselves, that we should feel a little bit. And I don't mean just ruchnis, I'm talking about adrabah, in Gashmis, that you should feel the tsar of your own life, the tsar of another Yid. That's the calling card of the Beis HaMikdash in you. If a person has a Beis HaMikdash that's built in their nefesh, the result of that is Rachmanim, Aishanim, Gamech HaSadim. So as we say this kind, we have to mispal very, very much. So we should have a Jewish heart. We should be zeichet to have a Jewish heart. Kinnos is one of the most important avodas really of Tisha B'Av. Is the inyan of the Asar Rugei Malchus. So let me just share with you a little piece from the Arizal and Shar Kavanis, and how the tragedy of it, but how important it is for that event to have happened. I mean, it's all b'diavad. It shouldn't, it should have been better, but how important that was, and how important it is for us right now, and a particular place in everyday's davening to be makash yourself with the Asar Rugei Malchus. The Arizal and Shar Kavanis is talking about at the end of Haidu. So, at the end of Haidu, beginning of davening, so there's an assortment of psukim, like random psukim. So one of the psukim that you say is Kel Nekamis Hashem, Kel Nekamis Efiyah. Kel Nekamis Hashem, that Hashem is described as Kel Nekamis, the God of vengeance. Kel Nekamis Efiyah, that Hashem should pass out this vengeance, this Nekama that He has. So what's the kavan of that pasuk when you say Kel Nekamis Hashem? So listen to what the Arizal says. Hine Kavanasenu Ata. And again, it's this. It's a complicated kavanah with shemus, but that's not the part that we could be makash ourselves to. But every day you say Kel Nekamis Hashem to think of this. It's important. Our kavanah at this point when you say Kel Nekamis Hashem is, so he says like this: Shadei Tefillah Sein B'chlal throughout davening, as I mentioned in the beginning. Lahalas ha'olamas. We're bringing up all worlds. V'lechol oisam ad olam hatzilas, and we're trying to connect them to that place of nothingness, that place of Achdas Hashem of Ein Sof. It's called Hatzilas. Now, as said the Arizal, as we're traveling and we're, gathering together the whole universe to daven with us, along the way, we are also gathering with us all the lost neshamas. Because after Adam Rishon is a big sugi by itself, but after Adam Rishon sinned, a vast majority of Nishmas Yisrael became lost among the lowest places. And when a person has their whole avodah of life, it's in order to raise up these neshamas, to try to help them. And the moment that a neshama is rectified enough that it should be able to breathe in planet Earth, to be able to continue fixing itself, that's when neshama is born. Like, where were you before you were born? There's a part of you that was in Shemayim, in that place of Ein Sof, but there was another part of you that was mixed up in all the klippas. Not in a physical place, in that dimension of Tumah. And the avoid of your parents, as we have to be makar toif, whether you like them or not, the avoid of your parents from the time that they were little kids until you were born, whether they realized it or not, is that they were being masaki in your neshama. They were fixing that part of your neshama that was lost among the klippas. And the moment that your neshama was put together enough to be able to come into the world to handle the air of this planet, that's when you were born. And then you begin to fix yourself. But the first shlab, the first level of fixing your neshama to allow you to even exist, that was from your parents. So this is something that a parent does for a child, a rebbe does for a talmid, and we all do for the neshamas that are connected to us. Because even if the person, there are myriads of neshamas that are connected to us, that we are their parents, even if we're not biologically their parents. So and davening is specifically a very strong time for this, of picking the neshamas up, as you go all the way up. So he says like this, Omnam, Hanitzaitis v'haneshamas asher nishblu b'olam ha'asiyah. And there's neshamas that are connected, that are lost in that place, that you could find them by Krishna. Those are neshamas that are not so deep down, And there's neshamas that are a little bit further deep in the mud, and Pesach the Zimmer can pick them up. But then there's neshamas that are mamish in the imke haklipis, and those are usually the biggest neshamas. Usually how it goes. The biggest neshamas in the lowest place is what's called, they're lost in the klipis of Asiyah. That's what it's called. So he says like this. They're different than the neshamas that are in the higher levels. Because in that lowest place of Asiyah, the klippas are very strong. It's very hard to fix those neshamas. It's impossible to fix those neshamas. And by the way, who you think we are? If this is Mashiach, we're alive, we're in this world, so we're somewhat fixed, but there's a lot of klippas of Asiyah that we're struggling with in our generation. It's impossible to take them out unless you connect yourself to the neshamas of the Asar Rugei Malchus. The inyan of the Asar Rugei Malchus, the Mesiras Nefesh that they experienced, was giving the koiches for all time until Mashiach comes to uplift the neshamas, specifically the neshamas of Asiyah. The lowest neshamas could only be fixed by being makash themselves to the Asar Rugei Malchus. The Haim Malaktim and Itzaitis and Neshama Shabasiya, they are the Ikr Neshamas that have this koyach of uplifting, of fixing these lowest Neshamas. Ki Ev Shalalaiktim, there's a reason also talking, Ev Shalalaiktim Shum Panim. It's really impossible to gather these Neshamas. Zulasi Adi Oisam HaNeshama Shal Asarugim Malchus, unless it's with the strength and the siyata of the Asarugim Malchus. And this is why they had to be killed. The reason why they had to be killed is what? In order that through their Mesiris Nefesh and through the unbelievable ascent that happens, because it only looks like the Romans were doing it. The Romans were just the vehicle to allow these Sadiqim to be Meiser Nefesh to Ein Sof, and with that ascent that they had, these Asarugim Malchus, with that they schlepped with them all the Neshamas and the lowest Madrega. And the reason I said this, so every single day in davening, when you say Kel Nekamas Hashem, you want Hashem to take Nekama from who? From what? You ask me Hashem to take Nekama against the Asarugim Malchus, and what's the biggest Nekama that the Asarugim Malchus want? What's the biggest Nekama? What does it mean? Kel Nekamas Hashem. The Nekama is not that Hashem punishes. The Nekama that we're davening for is that that we should be able to be picked up to become Tzaddikim ourselves. That's the biggest Nekama. That's what it means, Nekama. Kel Nekamas Hashem, Kel Nekamas Sefiyah. The Rizal goes on to say, by the way, that this is the iskashus that Asarugim Malchus happens when you say Kel Nekamas Hashem, and the actual uplifting of these neshamas to whatever extent possible to that day, to that person, happens by Tachlin, actually. So Tachlin is a very, very important tefillah. We don't say it on Tisha B'Av. It's a very, very powerful tefillah. Very powerful. It's connected with this kavon of Kel Nekamas Hashem. Those two things go together. So as we're saying, Arzei Levan and Adir Torah, if you kasher yourself to be tzaddikim, and to use their koyach of Mesiris Nefesh, to know that their Mesiris Nefesh means that we can be Mesiris Nefesh. A little bit blood and a little bit cracks to be able to be Mesiris Nefesh and to pick ourselves up, and not just us. We have to. I mentioned this. I think I don't know whether you're on the Rhine, the passage on the Rhine, and it's true for Tisha B'Av. It's true for every day, but especially Tisha B'Av. There's Roiv of Klal Yisrael out there does not know what Tisha B'Av is, and we have to be representatives of those neshamas. And those neshamas, there's no, listen, we're not on the madrega to know who's greater, who's worse, you know? It's well known that in Chabad circles you don't call it Kiruv, right? Why? Because the Rebbe used to say, Kiruv, v'chaykiva. You're close and he's far. You don't know who's close, you don't know who's far. So they call it Abbas Yisrael, Betzkin Abbas Yisrael. That's what it is. But so we don't know who's close and who's far, Bemis. But whatever extent possible to pick up Neshamas of Asiya, whether it be in this room or outside of this room, that's the avodah of this Kinnos. Should be zeicha to uplift ourselves. Arzei Levanai,
Thank you.
similar topic, which is tragedy of the Crusades, which, in a broader sense, is the gullus of Christianity, which is a little bit hard for us to somewhat relate to right now, because we're still in the gullus of Edom, obviously, but we're already the tail end of it. Even Pasi Shmuel really Erev Rav at this point. So Ramam is holding by the very end, but to appreciate a little bit. Again, I'm not a historian, and I always feel uncomfortable, honestly, when it comes to these inyan. Like, it's because you have to believe the neshamas of people that were killed by these barbarians are being mishtatif in our Kinnos. So it's not b'kavadik to talk about them and their it's not. So what I'll try to do is just to give a little bit of an avayt of what that gullus of the Noitzri is in the nefesh by us. And the Indian is not just to bemoan, Christianity was terrible. There's a tumah, there's a klipa called the Noitzri, and that klipa we have to eradicate. So what is that exactly? Rav Kook wrote, you have to be careful with this, honestly, but Rav Kook said that it was Bashkacha Pratis that Christianity developed during the times of the second Beis Hamikdash. We spoke about this by David's house last week. We had by the Arizal's yard side. The second Beis Hamikdash was unique in that there was a Beis Hamikdash, but it didn't have the Aron. The first Beis Hamikdash was a Beis Hamikdash with an Aron. The second Beis Hamikdash was a Beis Hamikdash without an Aron. Without getting into an Arichas Tvarim, the second Beis Hamikdash, in the writings of Rav Kook and the writings of Rav Tzadok HaKohen, the second Beis Hamikdash was a time, was the Renaissance of Halacha. The Renaissance of Halacha. That's when the Jewish people developed a very strong system of Torah Sheba'al Peh. There's always Torah Sheba'al Peh, but really, really fully developed is the second Beis Hamikdash. Whereas in the first Beis Hamikdash with an Aron, the first Beis Hamikdash was the Renaissance of Yiddishkeit as God as the center, if you don't to say such a thing. Whereas the second Beis Hamikdash, the Shulchan Aruch was the center. And I'm saying that, and there's tragedy in that. No, it's all about Hashgacha Pratis. It's all about Hashgacha Pratis, because in order to really develop a Shulchan Aruch, it's very difficult. It's like how Chaim Volozhin had a taina against the Chassidim. He said, how can you really get involved in a sugya and get to the depths of a sugya if at the same time you're crying with dveikus? The Baal Shem Tov, in fact, wrote in Tzavos, he didn't write this, but in Tzavos Rivash, it's recorded from Baal Shem Tov, that sometimes a person, this is how he puts it, that sometimes a person has to, Rachmana litzlan, take a break from dveikus in order to learn. That's how he puts it. Okay, that gets Chassidim in trouble, but there's such a thing that in order for halacha to be fully developed, the Aron has to be hidden. Such a thing. But that's a great tragedy. And the Jewish people that are so makusher with the Aron HaKodesh, with Elikus, and we come from that place of Edelkeit, so even in the second Beis Hamikdash, there was an unquenched thirst of godliness that was not being satisfied with the Beis Hamikdash without an Aron. So what comes in its place? So what comes in its place is K'koif B'nei Adam, as a monkey pretending to be a human being, is the name of the Noitzri. That klipa of the Noitzri is a fake imitation of dveikus. It's a fake imitation of dveikus, of being mekush yourself to that which is transcendent. So in that world, just give God your heart, believe in Him, and bris milah means circumcise your heart. The body is unnecessary to be circumcised, and all of that was tremendously appealing to Klal Yisrael at that time because the Aron was missing, and the Jewish people felt it and they knew it. But as we know, without Torah, without Shulchan Aruch, then the Rabbanei Shalom is unknowable, untouchable. That's what's uniquely beautiful about Shulchan Aruch and about Halacha, is that Halacha gives us the kelim, gives us the ways to tangibly have dveikus. Like, what is dveikus? What is dveikus? To stand, close your... It has to be within the kelim of Torah, the kelim of halacha. It has to be some... Otherwise, in the Rabbanei Shalom, it remains unknowable. So Christianity, therefore, they were dealing with this problem. They want to reintroduce... Again, I'm saying this kilu, it's like the Shem Shemayim. It's not. They're trying, they're trying to fill that void that Klal Yisrael were missing with the Aron HaKodesh, with Elikus, but disregarding the body of halacha. So then you have to make one of two choices. Either God remains completely unknowable, or you're megashen. You make Him physical. Those are the only two ways to do it, because without Torah mitzvahs, it's impossible to touch that which is untouchable without Torah. So the klipa of Natsir, the klipa of this tumah is very, very important. I just honestly, for a chaver like ours, it's also very important, because our whole shul is trying to try to build up that thirst once again of having the Aron HaKodesh. But the problem is that the problem could be, it's not a problem, I'm saying, but one has to always keep in mind the tumah of Noitzers, the tumah of Esav is this inning of trying to experience, to have iskashas with Elokus. You need the proper kalim for it. And so the entire tkuf of the Crusades, that's why B'davka, the darkest times in battling Christianity and dealing with the tragedies of Christianity was during the times of the Rishonim, which are Davka with Torah Shbal Peh. All halacha comes from the Torah of the Rishonim. Not Kabbalah, not Pnimis HaTorah, that was after the Rishonim and before the Rishonim. In terms of Pnimis HaTorah, the Rishonim, that Tkufa of the Christianity of the Crusades was the dark ages of Pnimis HaTorah. But that was Davka the time where Torah Shbal Peh flourished once again. And Davka there was a Hisoirus of the Noitzri once again. And so we have to always be mechazik ourselves with this balance. That if you want the Aron HaKodesh, you have to want the Aron HaKodesh. That's what Mashiach is going to do with the Aron HaKodesh. But to always know that the only keli to experience the Aron HaKodesh is with the Torah Shbal Peh that was flourishing without the Aron HaKodesh as well. That's why, sometimes people, one of the again, I have to be careful with what I say, but one of the recurring conversations that I sometimes have with a lot of chavers is like, I wish I learned this stuff when I was in yeshiva, right? Like, why weren't they quoting Kisvei Ari when I was a bachur in yeshiva? I would have been there. Maybe they could, I don't know. But there is something, Hashgacha Pratis, the Torah Shbal Peh developed without an Aron. There's Hashgacha Pratis in that. And then when Torah Shbal Peh is fully developed, and then you reintroduce the Aron, now you have a proper system. Otherwise, it's very hard to do it with Basachas. It's very, very hard. It isn't Hashgacha Pratis. Hashem should help us. We should be able to eradicate that tumah. We kasher ourselves to Lakus, to want to Lakus, but with the proper kalim, and never kasher to be Megashim. Because that's the thing, if you don't have the proper kalim, then either God doesn't mean anything to you, or it's physical. You have to avoid that really at all costs. Okay, so put the Kinnos Chav Beis, and we'll go straight to Chav Beis.
We did before.
Yeah.
whenever there was a Furbayim, mamish hours. But within all those like hundreds, thousands of hours, whatever, there's only a handful of times where like he lost it. You know, like he wasn't able to hold back his emotions. It was well known that his davening, when he davened, most of his davening once he became Rebbe was with the Chassidim, and then it was very didn't have a long Shemoneh Esrei. But people that saw knew that his hands were his fists were always closed like this, like he was controlling himself. And it was well known that when people saw a glimpse of him when he davened by himself, Yechida sometimes, so it was mamish like with like the Rebbes of old, you know. There was some handful of times by a Sikh or by a Maimer that he couldn't hold back, and one of the more famous ones is when he was talking about Golus, and he made the following like observation. He said, like, we think, like, who's in Golus right now? I think we're in Golus. So it's not true. It's not true. The Shekhinah is in Golus, but all neshamas that ever were are still in Golus. It means all the neshamas that even people that have passed on already, and they're in Shemayim, they're in Gan Eden, they're also being held back because of Golus. All neshamas are interconnected. It's all one guf. It's one Knesset Yisrael. And if the last Jew on planet Earth is still in Golus, it means all the way out from Avinu is in Golus. And so the Rebbe used to say in this, and then he lost it. He said, like, when a person has to daven for Mashiach and do everything you can to bring Mashiach and so on, you're not doing it for you. You're not even doing it for your neighbor. You're not doing it for your family. You're not doing it for Klal Yisrael in 2021. You're doing it for Avram, all the way back to Avram Avinu. Everyone is being held back, and they're all cheering for you and want, like, do it already. You know, that's what he wants. That's what the tzaddikim want. That's what this Kinnos number 26 is what we're up to. We're going to start moving a little bit quicker because I want to. By the way, you should know, like, I'm so impressed with all of you people because, like, we're going to make it to Chatzais, B'ez Hashem, you know. I've never before our show. I never went into Chatzais. He never did that. My grandfather went to Chatzais, you know. That's the way it was. But now we're our grandfathers, Baruch Hashem. So Kinnos 26 is Vayikani Yirmiyahu, Mahalach Yirmiyahu, Kirvi office, right? The famous thing that after the Churban, Yirmiyahu goes to Marsa Machpeil to daven to evoke to get Avram Avinu, Avram Yitzchak, Yaakov, Moshe, all the way to, we know, Rachel Imenu. This is not just like, oh, by the way, your children are in trouble. You have to understand the oimik of this. The Avos HaKadoshim are in Golus with us, because of us. And they're only going to get out of Golus when we get out of Golus. They're davening for us, they're also davening for themselves. So when we say this Kinnos, we have to be makasher ourselves and realize how much, it's a responsibility, but how much unbelievable power we hold if we could be the ones to push Gula that much forward. Push Gula that much forward. Again, it's not all or nothing. That much forward of Gula brings a Gula to all the neshamas that ever were. And you see specifically with Rachel Imenu, that's what the Kinnos ends off with the famous, with Rachel Imenu being piled something. So Rachel Imenu was not just one of the tzidkaniyos. Rachel Imenu is a person within whom all of Klal Yisrael are unified as one entity. And the tzaros of Klal Yisrael, she's the malchus, and the tzaros of Klal Yisrael, even to the lowest Jew, is acutely felt by the biggest tzaddikim that are in Gan Eden through Rachel Imenu. So Rachel is mavak al b'nei. The sign of Rachel being mavak al b'nei is this Indian of all of Klal Yisrael, even those that are in Gan Eden right now, being mishtatif and feeling the pain of Klal Yisrael, through this idea, through this reality of all of Klal Yisrael being unified as one. We should be zeicher that the Avos HaKadoshim, they certainly are coming to bat for us, and they should be Pal Yeshuas for all of us, for all of Klal Yisrael, for themselves. So it's up to Kinnos test. You know, it's a very strange medrash. The medrash says that David Melech said in Tehillim, "Erdoif oivai v'asigim v'yoshevad kaloisam." I'm going to run after my enemy. I'm going to capture them. I'm not going to return until I destroy them. And so the medrash says that's what David said. But then David's grandson Chavam said, "Rebbeinu Shalom, I'll run after them. I'll chase them. I'll capture them. But Rebbeinu Shalom, you have to destroy them." And Hashem said, "Fine, Master." And then it goes to Yossi HaMelech, and Yossi says, "Rebbeinu Shalom, I'll chase them, but you're going to have to catch them and destroy them." Hashem says, "Master." Until you get to Chizkiyo HaMelech, Chizkiyo says, "Rebbeinu Shalom, Ani Eshin Al Mitasi. I'm going to just stay in bed. Rebbeinu Shalom, and you, Ata Isa, you do everything." Rebbeinu Shalom said, "Maskim, I'll do." And that's how the destruction of Sancheiriv, right? The one that exiled the 10 tribes, and he laid siege against Yerushalayim. And at that time, you know, Chizkiyo HaMelech had an army, but it was nothing compared to Sancheiriv. It was not even a Shiloh. So that's when Chizkiyo said, "I'm going to lay in my bed. Rebbeinu Shalom, you take care of everything." And that's what happened. But the next morning, miraculously, it's the story in Sefer Malachim, the whole army of Sancheiriv was wiped out, and he lost his mind. It was a whole mind. So the Svarim say that this, like what's being described over here, like this sort of retreating of Jewish strength. It's like we read Tanakh, and David HaMelech is like, David HaMelech is cutting people's heads off, you know? David HaMelech is mamish, like strong. Shimshon HaGibor, these are people that, like, you know, they could do push-ups, you know what I'm saying? Like, these are strong people. These are very strong people. These were courageous people. And then, like, you know, fast forward, it's like, you know, like already we're like weak Americans, but I'm saying that even before America, you know what I'm saying? The strength, the courage of the tzaddikim of Tanakh. That's one of the reasons why they don't learn Tanakh in yeshivas, because like how do you explain tzaddikim killing people? Like how do you explain that? You know, the vision of a Rosh Hashiva now and a Rebbe and a tzaddik is someone that's all gray and bent over and doesn't have physical strength. But that's not how the tzaddikim were in the times of Tanakh. These were very, very powerful, physically courageous and powerful people. And so this medrash, in a certain sense, is tragic. It's describing the retreat of Jewish strength, of Jewish courage. That by David HaMelech, he was able to say, "I will be as big of a tzaddik, and my tzidkis won't be affected by my brutality when I need to be, and my courage when I need to be courageous." That's an unbelievable thing. But as the generations were moving on, Chizkiyo, it's not that Chizkiyo wasn't strong enough. He was saying, if I do what my great-grandfather did of David HaMelech, I'm not going to be Chizkiyo anymore. And so, like Rav Kook said, there was like I said before, this like subconscious haskama to Golas. Part of it is that not to that Gevurah should be retreating. But what's amazing is that any quality within the neshama can't be obliterated. It doesn't. What happened to that Gevurah? So really what happens in Golas is that Gevurah, that strength, that courage, shifts and changes hats. Instead of it being a courage and a physical strength in a way of like mamish, attacking enemies and so on, it becomes more of a Gevurah HaNefesh. To be able to withstand the nisyanis of Golas, to withstand the unbelievable suffering and the tragedies of Golas and so on. What happened to Jewish strength, the generations of Golos were maybe even stronger than David HaMelech, but it didn't manifest in that way of a sword. It manifested in the way of being able to take a sword. That's where the Gevurah came from. And in a certain sense, our generation is no weaker. It's no weaker. Although now there's an opportunity with Eretz Yisrael to literally, pick up arms. It's to show that, and Rav Kook saw that as part of something returning to what David HaMelech was about, the Verda Vasigim. I mentioned this before, that David HaMelech says when David HaMelech went to Bezdin and he needed to take an oath, it was a shua midaraisa, so he needed to keep this chayfetz. You have to hold on to a chefs shel mitzvah, something holy, tefillin, sefer Torah, something. So Avram Avinu held on to a bris milah when he made an oath, right? So what did David HaMelech hold on to? He held on to a sword. His sword was a chefs shel mitzvah, so he saw it. So there's a return to that, Bez Hashem, and it'll help in the right way. But every time a yid is able to stand up against an Nisayan, whenever an Nisayan comes your way to see something, to say something, whatever, to do something, not to do something good, to do something bad, you have to know at that moment don't think of yourself as like part of what makes it difficult to somehow overcome the Zionis is that we don't build up the moment enough. You know what I'm saying? Like that moment when, like, if you can imagine, like the general, like in the days of old, riding the horse and like just like getting everyone like foaming at the mouth to make that charge of the Erev Vasi game. So of course everyone's like all like worked up, to do that. That's exactly what's happening when Nisayin comes your way. It's just more edel. It's more, the gevura is restrained, but it's the same gevura that's there. And that's what this kinna number 29 is really about, is describing the tragedy that happens when people have to be so strong in Golas that in order to survive Ruchnias, we have to take physical tsaras. But there's a celebration in this kinna of the gevura nafshis, that gevura of old just manifesting itself more inwardly. And then when Mashiach comes, it's not that all of a sudden we're going to then become strong warriors. That gevura that we've always had, that has been actually building up, it's like people that are overweight, whatever, they'll say, underneath the layer there's like a healthy person. You know what I'm saying? It's just I just get rid of that layer, but underneath it's mamish, I'm ripped. That's exactly that's what Klal Yisrael is also. That's what we are. We're mamish like David HaMelech. Just underneath it's just like a layer of blubber. You just got to get rid of that layer, and when the layer is taken off, then it's the same gevura as David HaMelech. It's like to see that with their own eyes. Amarti Shuman. sing together. Oh, I remember this kinna, like, it doesn't need words, because it's self-explanatory, but the Mamish sums up what the Jewish word is, like, simcha on the one hand, when you think of Yerushalayim, and that simcha causes even greater agmas nefesh when you think about when you're not there. But then when you return to Yerushalayim, the simcha is even greater because you have that agmas nefesh. Connecting Chutzars with Eretz Yisrael, that's what it is. The agmas nefesh of Chutzars, when you then go to Eretz Yisrael, the simcha is that much more profound, that much deeper. Like the Zohar says, the Jewish heart is half laughing, half crying. That's what Tisha B'Av is. How does it start?
Mitzrayim
This is a lot of Kinnos are just really about focusing on what we want to get away from. The sorrows, the dollars, difficulties. Only very few Kinnos are really talking about where we want to just going away from. This is one of them. Everybody read the Levi, the heart of Klal Yisrael, the poet of Klal Yisrael, Tziyana of Tishali. It's all about the beauty of Eretz Yisrael. So let me share with you a couple lines from Tzver Shlomo. So Shlomo the Rabdamska, one of the great Hasidic tzaddikim. It's mamish half of the good piece. I don't know if you have it Tzver Shlomo, but if you have one, it's good to see the end of Parshas Maseh. It's a beautiful piece. So the story in Parshas Maseh is that you had the daughters of Tzlavcha were told that they're going to inherit their father's property. But then the problem was, the end of Maseh, so they were part of Shevet Yosef. So Shevet Yosef goes to Moshe and says, but here's the problem, they inherit their father's property. And then they marry people from Shevet Dan, whatever. So Mamela, the property is then going to shift from Yosef to Dan. And that's not fair. So Moshe says, you're right, fine. So he goes to Hashem Yisbarach, and Hashem gives him, fine, a new mitzvah, a new inyan, Hirah Shah. Al tisav nachal acher, that you should make sure that the nachal of the inheritance does not go to a different place, and the daughters of Slavchot should marry within their shevet of Yosef. It's interesting, Chazal say that this mitzvah only lasted so long. By the times of the Shoftim, this halacha was taken back, was rescinded, and then all the Shvat were able to marry one another. That's one of the celebrations of Tu Shvat, in fact, Tu B'Av, in fact. So listen to what the Tzver Shlomo writes. How's a good thing? A Jew has to have his shtoikikus. You have to have desire. You have to burn with a thirst to get to Eretz Yisrael. Ukdu shasa, to connect to the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Didn't have shuka. Instead of Tzver Shlomo, the shuka itself that you have to want to be in Eretz Yisrael is me'elas pa'atzma al gula asidim every minute. That's really what's going to bring the gula. Mitzvahs we do and so on, but the real catalyst to bring the Gula is going to be the generation that wants Eretz Yisrael more than anyone else. The Chaim Atzinu b'Vnei Yosef, and he says, and this is what was going on with the children of Yosef. If you ask the Rabbanei Shalom, the plan was not that there should be such a halacha that the shevet should marry within a shevet, but because of his shtoikikus, that the Bnei Yosef had to their particular Nachla. And what were they upset about? Going to another Shevet. It's all Klal Yisrael. But Eretz Yisrael meant so much to them that the thought of the Nachla that's supposed to be by Yosef moving to Shevet Zvulun, it bothered them so much that it was with such mysterious nefesh that their words became Torah. And when Moshe Rabbeinu brings their taina to Rabbeinu Shalom is machadish, something new, that the Nachla of Yosef has to stay in Yosef, everyone's Nachla stay, was actually generated, that halach was generated from their Ishtaikos. It says it for Shlema, this is why the halach was rescinded during the time of the Shoftim, because that Ishtaikos was no longer there. The Ishtaikos of Eretz Yisrael was keeping that halach alive. When the Ishtaikos moves away, then that halach is gone. And he goes on to say, if they didn't have such a desire, then lo yesigu tzivu yazos, and they wouldn't have been able to draw down that mitzvah. And said the Torah Shlema, this is the meaning of the pasuk, what it says in Parshas Nitzavim. V'omar hadora achrain, that the last generation will say, B'neichem asher yikum achreichem. Moshe says the generation that's coming after you, the last generation. Amo asa shem kachal Eretz hazois. They're going to see Golus, they're going to see Eretz Yisrael in the hands of the nations of the world. You see Yishmael Mahar Bais. And they're going to be the ones to ask, what's going on over here? How is this possible? Sheyesh La'avin. So said the Torah Shloima, why is it Lamatal Kasav Dafka B'dar Ha'achrein? Why is it Dafka the last generation that's going to ask that? Any generation could ask that, theoretically. Why is Moshe Rabbeinu prophesizing? No, it's only going to be the last one to ask that question. And why can't it be that an earlier generation will ask such a question? Of why don't we have Eretz Yisrael? The answer is what we said. The generation that puts their focus and their attention, their heart and mind to ask that question. Why is Eretz Yisrael not in our hands completely? Why is it not in our hands completely? And they will be the ones to truly mourn over the Churban Beis HaMikdash. They will be the ones to motivate the Gula, and automatically they will be the Dar Achron, the last generation. Whichever generation steps up to make that time, to have that request of Bnei Yosef, of what? Almas Hashem Kachal Eretz Hatzais, automatically they are the Dar HaAchron. This is an unbelievable thing. Because that means that all the previous generations, all the Matregis and Nevu and Ruach HaKodesh, they didn't have that burning question strong enough. And as I said, Eretz Yisrael Be'etzim is something that's L'mami Derech HaTeva. It's not, there's no mashal to it. It's not something that one can truly explain. So anything that's completely miraculous, therefore you don't have to explain it to yourself. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't have to say, well, I'm not a big Baal Madrega, so how could I be someone if my Shabbos is not perfect, if my learning is not perfect, my davening is not perfect, how could I be the one to ask that question? The answer is, Eretz Yisrael is a nace. Your hiskashrus to Eretz Yisrael is not limited to your maisim toivim. Eretz Yisrael is beyond your maisim toivim. It's not limited to it. It's not based on that. It's not makusha to that. It's irrelevant where you're holding in your ruchnias. The Dar HaAchrein that asked that question will be the Dar HaAchrein. And that's the question of all questions we have to be asking ourselves. That's what Tisha was really revolving around. Like I was talking last night, where's the horse? The horse is Eretz Yisrael, you know? There's always opportunities come and go, you know. What if it was a 7-day war, not 6 days, you know? Who knows? So you bemoan the past, like, oh, if I was there, you know, if I was a general, I would have invited into the Har Bayis, you know? The Rebbe was talking about, go to Damascus, that's what he was saying. In the 6-day war. So go all the way to Damascus. Okay, no. That's the way it is, Golas. They weren't the Dar Achrein. They weren't asking, Masham Kachal Eretz Hazois. It's not the time, it's not, whatever, it is what it is. You know? Someone has to be the Dar Achrein. That's Rabbi Levi. Rabbi Levi's talking to the Dar Achrein, whoever that Dar Achrein might be. That's what this Kinus is about. Just forget about trying to run away from Golas. Go to Eretz Yisrael. That's, I think, one of the most amazing qualities of our generation, of our particular Golas, is that it's not so bad. And if a person could, with that, ask the question, Almas Hashem Kochel Eretz Hazois, then that's a Dar Achrein question. Because any other previous generation, when they asked those questions of Almas Hashem, I want to go to Eretz Yisrael, it was because really, deep down, they want to just get away from the Kazakhs. But if there are no Kazakhs, so what are you getting away from? You're not running away, you're running towards. That's Gula. To be the ones to ask that question, finally. Tzia no Tisha. then we'll end. So Mem Aleph Shalis Sudadesh. This is very. It's one of those things. Again, you know the story, right? At least part of the story, for sure you know. The burning of 24 wagon loads of Talmud, just the Yad Vashem and so on, during the times of Ram Rinberg, times of the Rush in France. So this is what the Kinnos, this is written by the Ram Rinberg, the Vashem, the Rebbe of the Rush, bemoaning the Churban HaTorah that took place with the destruction of those wagon loads. So the actual event is a little bit hard for us to appreciate because Baruch Hashem, Talmud Bavli survives. Although there was a lot of Tisha Yad Bali and places that were lost forever because of that ruling. But if you take a look at the article on the bottom, there's a historical context that we know that the Rishonim understood that this tragedy that happened with Bashkal is because in the same spot, a bunch of years earlier, there was another burning of the Rambam's writings, the Mar Nevuchim. Mar Nevuchim, the Kaiser Reflex, and the Sefer Ramada, parts of the Rambam that, the parts of the Rambam that are more, based on philosophy and so on. And in the world of the Rambam in Egypt and in most of the Sephardi countries, that Yiddishkeit was very much integrated with the philosophy, Aristotelian philosophy, Muslim philosophy that was part of that Hashkafa. Torah was connected with that. But when the Mar Nevuchim made its way to Europe, so it was mamish a shock to the system because Chachmei Ashkenaz was the Hashkafa of Chachmei Ashkenaz was based on Kinus, it was based on Kabbalah, it was not based on philosophy at all. That was one of the interesting historical things. Ashkenazim, depends on the Rishonim, was much more Kabbalah-based than the Sephardim. So there was a public burning, of the Rambam's writings, and then years later, in that same spot, there was the burning of the Talmud and the Kisvei Yad Bali Taisvis. So it seemed as a tikkun, apart from that. What's even more interesting, which we're going to try to talk about in a minute, is that one of the great Bali Taisvis at the time, after this tragedy took place, it was so mamish decimated the Jewish community in terms of Torah, it was mamish impossible. So this Rabbeinu Chiel in Paris, that's from Paris, it was one of the places. He decided, okay, you know what, it's enough for everybody, it's not working out. He made Aliyah, and he brought with him a whole chevra of Bali Taisvis, and that really was one of the earliest yishuvs of Eretz Yisrael from Ashkenazim. From Paris, and Paris also made Aliyah. This is an interesting phenomenon. That from the burning of the Mar Nevuchim, eventually would lead to the first, I guess, relatively modern yishuv in Eretz Yisrael, from Chachmei Ashkenaz. So this article doesn't explain what exactly, what's the Hashkafa Pratis in that. So let me, if you don't mind, Mamsha, it's a fascinating Indian. This Indian of the Mar Nevuchim, and Bechlal, our relationship to philosophy, amongst the Chassidim, it's a very controversial point. To learn Mar Nevuchim, obviously by Chassidim, by the Baal Shem Tov, Umur Pshuta, it's like the Ikr. And philosophy doesn't seem to be in line with the Umur Pshuta, trying to explain everything and so on. So, but I'll give you an example. There's a line in Chaim Maran from Rabbi Nachman. It's a sharp thing. He says, from Nelson quoted, Rabbi Nachman said, it's possible lahakir b'fnei adam. I could tell by a person by looking at them in Lamad Mar Nevuchim, if they ever learned Mar Nevuchim, Shapanim nishtana l'ra. The face has some negative quality to it after learning Mar Nevuchim. But all that Tzelem L'Kim is at some level not as clear as it was before personally Mar Nevuchim. So that's obviously a heavy no. Right? That's a strong no. It's understand as many schools, Mitzad Sheni, what's interesting is Pinchas Karitzer, for example. He used to say he had Mar Nevuchim and he would never lend it out anymore. He said why? He said because having Mar Nevuchim in my Rishos gives me Yerushin. And if I lend it to you, it means I'm going to lose my Yerushin. It's also well known that the Rebbe Rashab had a Chavrusa shop with his son, the Frierdiker Rebbe, when he was a teenager, and something like 2 hours a day of Sifri Machshava, and part of that was a healthy diet of Mar Nevuchim. So this was his explanation, what exactly our Indian Mar Nevuchim is. So is it there's famous thing from the Gra, right? It's well known that the Rambam writes that Kishav, Shaden, all these things are not really, it's just a little. And so the Goyen writes in his Asagas in Shulchan Aruch, his Bira Shulchan Aruch, it's a famous thing that the Goyen says that philosophy Hiteu, that the philosophy Harura, a cursed philosophy, tilted the Rambam to the wrong place, and he made a mistake in this because of that. And then the Gra goes like off script. It's very interesting. It's only one, as far as I know, in Bir Gra where he's like screaming. He says, "The Eini Mam in Ladvarmi." He says, "I don't believe." And he's like being mechazik himself in Emunah Pshut. Like, I don't believe in philosophy. He says, "I don't believe in philosophy." And he says, "I believe in the Divrei Chazal, the Kipshutam, the words of Chazal Kipshutam." He says, although of course they have a pneumius, they have an inner and a deeper meaning, but not the pneumius that the philosophers think. The pneumius of pneumius Torah. So, what's this meaning of philosophy? So is philosophy outside of Torah? And if it is, how the Rambam? How do we make sense of it? It's the Rambam. So listen to a line I found. This from the Yavitz, not Yaakov Emden, an earlier Yavitz from the Svardish Rishonim, late Rishonim. Listen to what he says. One of the Kubalim. He says about the Rambam. Ki hay kadosh v'chasid mileid mibeten. The Rambam was a kadosh and a chassid from birth. Umihiroyan from even pregnancy, from when he was conceived. Bikama doiris, not just him, for many generations. Tzaddik ben tzaddik, chassid ben chassid. It's coming from a very holy place. Toiris elokot beliboy. Toiris Hashem was in his kishkes, you know. Ochal nechashim v'akrovim, and he was able to eat nechashim v'akrovim, snakes and scorpions. The shoveloi lemazing toiv, and he had such a good stomach. He had such a holy stomach that he was able to digest nechashim and akrovim and turn that into something that's nutritious. The nivchar mitzad it's tamchus kedushasa v'chasidusai, and the holy, righteous gut that he had was able to convert that which the emes is outside of Torah to become Torah. This is an unbelievable chiddush of the Rambam. It's not good true. Philosophy is outside of Torah. But if you're the Rambam and you have a good belly and you have such a holy stock, you're able to eat nechashim v'akrovim, and that becomes something digestible. If you have a better stomach, you can digest things that other weaker stomachs can't. And this connects with the site of what Eretz Yisrael is. What's Eretz Yisrael? The Meraglim came back from Eretz Yisrael and they said, Eretz Eichelas Yeshveh, it's a place that consumes its inhabitants. Rabbi Nachman writes in the Likutei Moharan that Eretz Eichelas Yeshveh, it's a pasuk in Chumash. It's 100% true, Eretz Eichelas Yeshveh. And the way to have Eretz Yisrael is not a place to live in. Eretz Yisrael is a reality that has to consume you. And Eretz Yisrael has an ability of taking something that would seem to be on the outside of Kedusha, the outside of Tahara. Eretz Yisrael has a good gut. The gut of Eretz Yisrael is able to consume the Nechashim v'Akrovim and turn it into something holy. This is why, there's a couple from the Rishner. The Rishner said that the Rambam's neshama was a neshama that was coming from Sheikh ben David. And which is why the Rambam, the one, really, and only person to ever do such a thing, of the Makabets, of gathering together all the halachas of Torah Shabbal Peh into one place. The Rif did it, although not as organized as the Rambam does, but even the Rif doesn't do halachas that are not negeya to golas. Only the Rambam did such a thing, of all halachas that are negeya to Beis HaMikdash, not Beis HaMikdash, golas, chutz, everything. Makabets nidchei Yisrael. Klal Yisrael, every single one of us is a chelik of Torah. By the Rambam, the Makabets, all the halachas of Torah Shabbal Peh into Yad HaChazak, into those 14 hands, into those 14 svarim, the Yad HaChazaka, the Zroy and the two of Geula, that itself was the light of Mashiach Tzidkenu. And all the Melchamas, all the Melchamas really, honestly, Melchamas against the Rambam, it goes back to the old tragedy of Mashiach ben Yosef versus Mashiach ben David. It's all old history and recurring itself for very, very many times. Let's go back to this story. This story is an amazing thing. The Davka the Mer Nevuchim is what led Klal Yisrael to Eretz Yisrael. Because that's exactly the whole site of Mer Nevuchim. The site of the Rambam is to take something that would seemingly be outside of Kedushas HaTorah, and by the holiness of that person, the Rambam, the holiness of his mind and heart, to convert it into something holy. That's mamash what Eretz Yisrael is. By being makasher ourselves to Eretz Yisrael, it's not just like we're now in a nice place. Eretz Yisrael has to consume you, and you become transformed from a nachash and an akrav into something that's holy and digestible and delicious through his kashrus with Eretz Yisrael. And that all began, and that's expressing itself with this inyan of the Rambam of Mer Nevuchim. So as we say this Kinnos Mem Aleph, to take everything that's within ourselves that's maybe on the outside a nachash and an akrav and not so holy. But we should realize that with the koich of the Rambam, the koich of Torah Kedosh, Kedushas Mashiach ben David, it could be converted to something which is mamish delicious and mamish holy. Shali through the Vesh, Shlomo Gavai, let's have a Shlomo contest in
embarrassed to talk about this. There's nothing to say. You know, like I think I mentioned this last year. If you took a time machine at someone that went through the Crusades, whatever it is, and like put him there, it was like, you know, it's overwhelming. It's not. There's nothing really to say. Just maybe one nakuda, just to mention, like to appreciate the change that took place from the Milchama, before the Milchama, after the Milchama. It's a different planet. It's a different planet. You know, America's called a melting pot, right? That's what it's called. It's a melting pot. This. I'm trying to find a way to say this. After the war, there was something changed. Something changed that people after the war were not stuck in their own countries. Obviously, millions of people were misplaced. That's besides the point. Just even traveling, like this musik of traveling, of not being in your particular place, of being able to travel, to visit other places. There was no such thing. Like before the war, it was not only technologically it was difficult to travel, but like the mentality was not such of wanting to go see the far-flung end of the world. It wasn't like we had adventurers, you know, but it wasn't. Something changed. Something changed. The Baal Tanya, there's a Kabbalah from the Baal Tanya that he said that before Mashiach comes, the last Golus is going to be a type of neshama that hasn't come into the world before. Until the last Golus, he said, neshamas are going to be very clear who they are. You're a Kayandik, you're Heveldik, you're Chesedik, you're Gvurdik, you're Tiferes, whatever. You're Munkach Chesed, that's who you were, that's all that you will ever be. And that'll be, and you'll be happy with that. That's fine. But then before Mashiach comes, there's a new category of neshamas, which is a category of klal. It's klal. Neshamas that don't know who they are and can't know who they are in truth, because we're no longer monkach and not taimani. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're everyone. And this is what frustrates. This is what causes difficulty when a person wants to like have their derech. Like, how many times? It's very hard to have that derech because there's a part of you that's connected with that particular derech. There's another part that's not. And this manifests itself in all sorts of ways. The fact the world is traveling like this. But one of the great tragedies in that is like not having that derech, you know? Like, it's a beautiful thing when you could bear it, and eventually when you can make sense of yourself, then you actually come out bigger and broader for it. But that mahalach of finding yourself, and you don't have like that messiah, that strong, like, this is who I was, this is my grandfather, my great-grandfather, this is who, that pashtus is somewhat lost. And that's it's our greatest strength and weakness in Galus America. That's part of what it is. It all happened from that churban in Europe. That shift, it was a huge shift. It wasn't just a shift in like culture and a shift in the shamas. Like the shamas is a different category ever since then. It was a huge. It's like Ruchaim Eloshin said, Mashiach to come, the last goal is America, but he was crying because in order to get there, it's going to have to be Amish Urban. So we have to draw strength from those neshamas, because the Sarugim Malchus, it's connected to those the Kedoshim from the Holocaust. And we have to draw strength from them to pick ourselves up, to find our path, you know, to find our path. Those displaced persons after the war, they continue to be displaced in our generation too. It's one of the lesser focused on Nakudas, what happened with the war, that sense of being displaced, of not knowing where you come from. If you harness it, it could be an amazing milah, because then you could be outside and learn Rav Kook and the Satmarov in like one sitting down, you know. But there's something tragic about being on the outside looking in, you know. That's part of what the Churban was. Zichrun Avikainu, Yisrael. Kolchem Yisham Baruch, Yishma Shemanis, Jesus, Mishnah Zalzaris, Prophet, Son, the Jew, the Tzakos, and
For next 2 years. Discuss that. This is the way it's hard.
How should you use this?